everybody. Happy Thursday to you all. Or Wednesday? Thursday?
We are Wednesday.
Woo, baby. It's already been a day, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Wisconsin Weather Experts. It's a busy day in the weather department, and we're going to branch out a little bit across the country, but we're going to focus in a lot on our area right here because we have thunderstorms rolling through at the moment.
Yeah, thunderstorms now. And Steph, you've been talking about some hail within these storms, but believe it or not, snow is going to be here by tonight. So another wacky weather day for us.
Absolutely.
It's going to be a lot going on, and I know you're going to be breaking down those details of what we can expect here locally and even regionally.
Exactly. So why don't we just dive right on in, especially to what we've got here in southeast Wisconsin. Here's our current view of satellite and radar. So you can see most of it is tame. We just have some rain showers passing on through, but we are watching some of our southern communities. Nothing strong, nothing severe at the moment, so that's some good news. But you can see Monroe to Janesville over to Lake Geneva. We've got a couple of storms that are just a touch stronger, and they may produce some small pea-sized hail as they continue to make their way up towards the north. But everybody else in southeast Wisconsin, it is primarily just a nice rain, kind of nice to see at this point. That being said, there's still a lot more towards the south of us as well as towards the west. We do still have the chance for a strong to severe thunderstorm, especially later on this afternoon and early evening. And then we're going to get the wintry side of this storm system in a rapid changeover to snow between about 7 and 9 o'clock tonight. But until then, we'll continue to watch all this activity across northern Illinois. It's all tracking up towards the northeast here. So just a lot of rinse and repeating. And again, nothing, thankfully, at this point severe. Now, just a short time ago, there was a warning out west with this, we'll call it second line of thunderstorms really coming together across eastern Iowa and west central Illinois. This is also going to track its way up towards the northeast. That warning has expired, which is good news, but it does just go to show we're not quite done with the low severe threat for today. The greater threat overall is south of us in Illinois. But again, we're not quite out of the woods. Now, we do have a clearer picture of what our primary threat is going to be. Yesterday, thinking it would be wind and hail with a low threat of tornadoes. Now, that tornado threat is actually south of us now because there is a stationary front draped right across northern Illinois. It is no longer expected to reach its way into southern Wisconsin. So that's also going to impact temperatures. We'll more so see, low 40s, I think, for most spots, but it does once again keep the tornado threat down south of us into Illinois. I think at this point, hail looks to be the primary threat. We've already seen some small pea-sized hail south of us, marble to nickel-sized hail. So I do think in any potential severe weather we see this afternoon and early evening, it is more so going to be some of that larger hail and potentially some stronger wind gusts as well. Here's that frontal boundary that we were just talking about. It really is just south of us in northern Illinois, but it's stationary right now. And again, it's not really expected to push any farther towards the north. And then look at the wintry side of this storm system too. There are blizzard-like conditions extending from northwestern parts of our state all the way down into Kansas with some wintry mix closer to Kansas City and then down south into Oklahoma. This is one of those really big dynamic storm systems, again, kind of mimicking what we saw last Friday, but not quite as strong. It's not going to bring in, a multi-day severe event like we saw with that last storm system. But again, it does still bring at least a little bit of a severe threat today, especially south of us. Look at the winter weather headlines associated with this, though. Winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories just north of our viewing area here in southeast Wisconsin. And then all that orange, blizzard warnings extending from southern Minnesota all the way down into Kansas. These spots are looking at least 4 to 8 inches of snow, if not even closer to 10 in a handful of local communities, as well as blizzard conditions, because we're also going to see the wind with this storm system. Now, here's the latest convective outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. So again, the severe threat here. Notice how it's really been upgraded down towards the south and parts of Illinois, as well as far western Indiana. That slight risk still kind of right up to the border, goes along with where that stationary front is right now. And then those of us in southeast Wisconsin still under that level 1 marginal. So we will still see that chance through about 7 o'clock tonight for a strong to severe thunderstorm. When it comes to the wind, we have a wind advisory here locally. It's not going to go into effect until later on this evening, but look at how many spots have either wind advisories or high wind warnings in that tan color. There are still red flag warnings and fire danger. it's really a rinse and repeat type situation, unfortunately. For southeast Wisconsin and really all of southern Wisconsin, our wind advisory begins at 7 o'clock tonight, continues until 7 tomorrow morning. So even overnight tonight, the wind is going to be even stronger with gusts over 40 miles per hour. And that is because the center of the low itself is going to be passing just south of our area. Let's go through timing for the rest of the afternoon. So starting at around 2 o'clock, you can still see plenty of showers and thunderstorms in the vicinity with that wintry mix just off towards the west. Wausau may be seeing some snow, northwest Wisconsin, more of that wintry mix. Now down towards the south, we'll start to see that changeover here after about 7 o'clock. And then everybody throughout the night will still be dealing with some slushy snowfall accumulation. It's finally out over the lake during our pre-dawn hours on Thursday, but I do think it's going to be a situation where we're going to need to shovel a little bit before we head to work Thursday morning. Now, highest snowfall totals still expected towards the west, or northwest, I really should say. Notice how a lot of these spots could be potentially within a 4 to maybe 8-inch range, and even slightly higher totals in some, specific communities. As we get farther towards the south, some lesser totals, especially the southern lakeshore. I think we could be looking at maybe an inch or two, but then the rest of southeast Wisconsin about 1 to 3. Fond du Lac, Dodge, and points towards the especially west could still see some of those slightly higher totals, maybe around 4 inches for Dodge and Fond du Lac specifically. So it's still going to be a snow producer here locally. More of a zoomed in view for you here, just to more so show that 1 to 3 for a good chunk of the area, slightly less for the southern lakeshore, slightly more for some of those northwestern communities. Now today is our active day. Tomorrow we're going to quiet things down, but it is going to be a little bit cooler. In fact, aside from Friday being in the 50s, we do have a cooler than average forecast into the weekend and into early next week. And I would say just gear up for more of some of that cooler than average air. As you can see here, all the way into the end of the month and maybe early April, we could be looking at a below average stretch of weather. So I know I just threw so much at you, because we have the storms, we have the chance for snow, and then that drop in temperatures. But that is the very latest. Although we do have our fancy middle computer here, which has our chat system with the National Weather Service, so they give us periodic updates. Lisa, what is the latest update we just got?
So I was actually watching this when you were on air for Dane County, especially near Belleville. So again, that is just to the south of Madison. They are seeing significant pea-size hail, and they're putting not a severe thunderstorm warning on this, but a special weather statement. So pea to half-inch hail is possible in that area. Again, a strong thunderstorm is moving just south of Madison and moving up closer to Madison. So again, as Steph's been talking about, really the main threat with these storms, it is going to be the hail.
Right.
Because we are north of that stationary front, we've really cut off that tornado threat and cut off that severe wind threat as well. Now, it doesn't mean we can't have some storms that have the potential of that later on in the day. It depends where that front is set up, but it's going to be the hail that we could have within these storms, and that's what we've really been tracking as we're continuing through the morning hours. It's all about the storms right now that are producing some hail for us.
Yes, and we will have another update after the commercial break a little bit later on. So we will really try to give periodic updates on some of the active weather we have right now.
Sounds good. Well, we've been dealing with a slew of weather events, whether it's from severe weather to snow to even wildfires. And yes, unfortunately, we're dealing with this fire in Green Lake County, and thankfully the DNR has said now that it is contained.
Great
finally
news.
It is. We definitely had a lot of impacts. Again, for those who don't know Green Lake County, that is just off to the northwest of Fond du Lac, and we have some footage that shows the significant fires that were moving through that area. So that's really what we're continuing to track. The fire started a couple days ago. One thing is it was the initial starting point was the White River Marsh State Wildlife area, and it burned between 700 to 800 acres. Yeah. So there were structures that could potentially have been in danger, but they were not. They were all saved, which is great news there. They really want people to stay clear of this area, because even though that the fire is contained, I'm sure that they're still trying to figure out what the cause was. So they are analyzing the area landscape itself, trying to still look and assess the damage that has occurred and make sure again that everything is safe.
Yes.
This time of year, we're in our spring fire season, and all the vegetation is dead and brown due to winter. And when it gets dry and windy, we can have big catastrophic fires like this.
Man,
Exactly what he said too. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's a myth that we can't have wildfires when there is snow on the ground. Remember, a lot of these cattails and marshland, they're tall and it's all just dry and dead. So it very easily, great picture right there, very easily can ignite. And then with the strong wind, then it just spreads very, very quickly. We've seen it already a couple of times in our area, and going forward, you know, it is still going to be something we need to think about during our spring months.
Absolutely. And fires are not only something that's impacting us here locally. We've had fires all the way down to Oklahoma.
Yes.
That has been igniting again those fires, and the winds have lofted that up and brought it here locally. So yesterday we saw a little haze to the sky. That was from the wildfires. And it's not only the fires that portions to the southwest of us have been dealing with, but it's the dust. We've seen some of that here too locally.
Yeah, take a look at this. So this is actually from New Mexico. And, you know, I feel like we've said this multiple times because this has just been ongoing, at least for the last month. But this is actually footage from, again, New Mexico. Large gusts of wind swept over bare soil, causing large clouds of dirt and dust, near zero visibility for drivers. New Mexico's transportation department actually had to shut down an interstate as a result of that. I mean, this has just been devastating, not just for this area, as Lisa mentioned, all across, you know, the Southern Plains. In fact, the storm that we just saw on Friday, now in Kansas, that caused a pileup, leaving 8 people dead, unfortunately.
It's always a sad thing, and it's something, again, you might not expect to hear about as much, but we have also talked about when we have these dust events, if that gets lofted into the air, and we've seen this, call it dirty rain, that actually can stick to the water in the air, those rain droplets, and when it falls down, it may look as rain, but when it dries and all the water evaporates, you can see a lot of the little dust markings on your windshield, on surfaces. So we're going to have to see, again, with the smoke and the dust being lofted into the air, especially after our event today, can we have some of those dirty rain droplets in some areas as well? That also, again, puts a good note. Snow. I know some people like to play in the snow.
Yeah.
You don't want to eat this snow. There's a lot of harmful particulates in the atmosphere that, again, even our current system could stick to snow-wise. So that is going to make it dirty snow more harmful. Again, if you are someone or a little kid who might like to still, you know, put it in their mouth, you definitely don't want to do that with this system.
Something just to keep in mind. Absolutely.
Well, speaking of more unfortunate damage across the United States, we have drone footage as the cleanup occurs across the Ohio and Mississippi River valleys, and this actually is the aftermath of an extremely powerful tornado that ripped through Missouri. The destructive video here is in Walworth County, and at least 3 people, unfortunately, were killed when the storm passed through a mobile home park on Saturday. Elsewhere in Mississippi, officials were saying that a mother and her stepson were killed in Jefferson Davis County. Another person lost their life due to the storm in Covington County, and the tornadoes in Mississippi were all part of that massive storm system that brought severe storms, tornadoes, and dust storms across several states. This was the exact same storm system that brought us some severe weather here locally as well. Thankfully, again, we don't have that. But again, this just shows you the power of these systems. I mean, those trees are gone and they are never fully going to recover. Those, unfortunately, again, not only the damage to the trees, but the structures and your life. It's not something we want to hear about, but this is why we do take severe weather very seriously, because especially when these systems occur in the nighttime, you can't see where those storms are at.
And so the tornado threat, once again, primarily south of us today, but parts of Illinois and Indiana could unfortunately still be dealing with some of that. Let's cross the pond. Let's head to Spain. This is pretty incredible footage here. 2 dogs safe from floodwaters in Spain. This is just a dog owner's worst nightmare, right? They were being rescued by civil guards. Over 350 homes in southern Spain were evacuated, and over 40 highways were shut down after the area was ravaged with flash floods. So regional officials ordered the evacuation after a river burst at its banks, and 19 other rivers in the region were put on high alert. Emergency services responded to hundreds of calls for assistance, including the rescue of these 2 dogs. So the same area was actually hit in November with heavy rains, and that led to devastating flooding, claiming 233 lives. So it's just so unfortunate to see a scene like this again in a similar area.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, the top 2 weather phenomenons that cause fatalities for humans, it's heat and it's flooding.
Yes.
So flooding is up there in the rankings. You know, we normally think about tornadoes, hurricanes, lightning, and yes, while that can be a risk to humans, it really is when we have those dangerous heat in the summer sometimes, and flooding, especially when it's unexpected for flash flooding, or when people go across areas that don't really think is deep, and then the current can just sweep you away. So we are going to have a lot more coming up, though, for your Wisconsin weather experts coming up. We're going to talk about locally the precipitation change that's going to occur, how that occurs, and a lot more on some people that we welcomed back to Earth yesterday.
You'll want to stick around. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody, to Wisconsin Weather Experts. Still watching showers and thunderstorms across southeast Wisconsin. Just want to give you a quick update. So here's a live look at satellite and radar. Now, we were watching this cell near Madison, and I'm just going to zoom in real quick on it. You can kind of tell it's one of the stronger cells approaching the city as we speak. There is the potential for some hail within that storm, P to maybe marble or nickel-sized hail. There was that potential as it was just south of the Madison area. So other than that, everyone else is more so just dealing with a decent rain, but there is plenty more activity towards the south and towards the west that we will be dealing with as the day goes on. So still keep an eye out, be weather aware, and we will talk plenty more coming up a little bit later on.
Well, and that's great news, because even as we were looking at that radar, you may have seen off to the north the blue snow.
Oh, yes, it's coming.
It's going to be here. You know, winter's not done with us yet, but while we're seeing rain and snow in the forecast, our chief meteorologist, Tom Walks, is going to break down what we can expect in terms of the changeover and how those types occur.
Well, sometimes we show weather maps on TV that look like this, pretty colorful, right? Where we have the blue, which denotes snow, but then we have the pink area, which denotes mixed precipitation. But what does that really mean? That can mean a whole lot of different things, right? From sleet to freezing rain. So let's break down what this mixed precipitation really means. So as we take a look at these different types of wintry precipitation, we have to look at what's going on not just here at the surface, but what's going on above us, especially in terms of temperatures. So all precipitation starts out as snow, way up high. But depending on what happens with the temperatures just above us, the temperatures can warm, and that can cause that precipitation to melt, which in turn causes mixed precipitation. So we'll start here with rain. Very simply, you have cold air where it starts out as snow, and then the air warms up, so that snow melts into rain. That's pretty easy to understand, right? But it gets a little more complicated when you talk about freezing rain. Now, same type of a process, right? You have the cold air higher up, so it starts out as snow. Now it melts in that warmer air into rain, just like in the rain example, but wait a minute. Then there's some cold air closer to the Earth's surface. But that cold air is not deep enough to cause that liquid water to turn back to ice before it hits the ground. So we call this freezing rain. What really happens here? Well, this is where it's just like normal rain. It falls as liquid, right? But it doesn't freeze until it makes contact with something that is below freezing. And that is key with freezing rain. So it's falling as liquid water, but then it hits a tree branch. It hits a car. It hits the pavement, something, maybe a power line that's below freezing. And as soon as the water hits that surface that's below freezing, boom, it turns to ice. So it falls as liquid, but then it turns to ice because of that narrow layer of cold air. Well, now we have sleet. That is a little bit different. And again, note the temperature profile here, also very different. So it starts out as snow. The warm layer here, though, with sleet is a lot narrower. So it melts into liquid, just like rain does, right? So it turns to rain. But note the difference. See how the cold air with sleet is thicker towards the surface and it goes higher up? So because that cold layer is thicker, the rain is able to freeze back to ice. So what is sleet? sleet is ice pellets. So it goes from liquid and it has enough time as it's falling to turn into ice pellets and kind of pings as it hits the ground. So again, freezing rain is liquid water that freezes on contact when it hits the ground. Sleet falls as ice pellets. And finally, we have snow. That's really a very simple one because the entire column of air is cold. So it never has time to melt. It just simply stays all as snow. So again, very interesting because of the temperature profile here. So let's go back again and talk about this, that sleet is ice pellets. It's where the snow melts, but then it has time to refreeze once again. Freezing rain, and the freezing rain aspect can be confusing because sometimes you can confuse that with sleet. Freezing rain is where the snow melts into rain, but it doesn't have time to refreeze into ice pellets until it hits a surface that is below freezing. Then it turns back to ice. Meanwhile, grapple, we haven't talked about this one. Grapple, they're like soft snow pellets. Sometimes we'll see that happening during the winter months as well. And this is where you have liquid water higher up. It's actually called supercooled water when temperatures are below freezing, but you can actually still get liquid water at times when temperatures are below freezing. And that liquid water freezes on snow, and that in turn causes those soft snow pellets. So wintry precipitation, it can be certainly very interesting, but there are distinct differences. Bottom line, with any of this wintry precipitation, they can all lead to slick roads. Freezing rain in particular, because of that icing, because it ices up, let's say, on power lines and things like that, when you get freezing rain combined with the wind, that's when we really start to worry more so about power outages. Well, hey, do you have a question for us on Wisconsin Weather Experts? Scan this QR code with your phone, and you can submit a weather question for us, and we'll talk about it right here on Wisconsin Weather Experts. Again, we want to hear from you. We love being able to talk all about the science and all about the weather. So please submit your weather question. We would love to give you a shout out and answer your weather questions right here on Wisconsin Weather Experts.
And now you know what to expect as things are happening later on tonight. A brief wintry mix and then that change over to snow.
Yeah, and it's a great reminder because it's the simplest change of the temperature profile in a different area or part of the atmosphere that can switch things over. So
exactly,
as Steph just mentioned, yes, we'll be watching for that later on today.
Yes. Okay, let's take a quick break because after the break we have something super exciting to talk about. You may have seen it yesterday. We're not going to spoil it for you, but as Lisa mentioned earlier, we welcome some pretty important people back to Earth. We'll talk about it coming up.
Welcome back to the Wisconsin Weather Experts. We've covered a slew of things from all the weather that's been going on nationally, from the storms to the dust. But while we are welcoming you back, we're actually welcoming some people back to Earth as well.
Yeah, maybe you got a chance to watch it on NASA's live feed, or I know we had it live on our 4 and 5 o'clock newscasts here on Fox 6. But take a look at some of this footage. It's pretty awesome.
And splashdown, Crew 9 back on Earth.
Oh, it's just stunning visuals here. So SpaceX, those 2 astronauts that were stuck in space, what was meant to be an 8-day trip turned into a 9.5-month trip. Oof. They were welcomed back yesterday. Splashdown, it was just before 5 o'clock, I want to say.
Yeah.
And we watched it. Lisa, you and I and Tom, we were all back here watching.
It was incredible to watch. And again, they were stuck at the International Space Station for just over 9 months. If you recall, back in 2020, SpaceX actually had the first humans on it that came down into the ocean. So that marked 45 years, a significant thing for space history, where we were able to have astronauts in an American spacecraft come down into the ocean. So it's nice to know that after that test in 2020, we're still able to use the same spacecraft to get these astronauts back down here locally to Earth.
Yeah, that was really cool too. You saw a video at the end of them sitting basically in a wheelchair. We need to remember that, you can't walk after you get back from space. Just from watching some of that footage, it's really enlightening as to just the differences and everything that those astronauts go through.
Well, we'll have to see, and they're getting a lot of medical treatment just to make sure they're fine. I mean, you lose bone mass, you lose muscle mass, so I kind of think I like being down here on the ground, but that video we have, I mean, look what technology does for us.
I know.
It gives us a different view from the sky.
Incredible. All right, everybody, here's a live look at radar. Remember, showers and storms possible through the rest of the afternoon. We'll keep you updated if anything is severe. Have a great day.